Welcome back to the Labeled Podcast, the stories, rumors, and legends of Tooth and Nail Records. My name's Matt Carter, and the show today, as I said at the end of the last episode, is we were going to take your questions. We asked you to send in some voice memos of what you guys wanted to know and from whom you would like to know it. And we got so many questions and so many voicemails that it was crazy. So we decided to narrow it just to but one emergent category of question that we got and do the whole episode about that. And it turns out to be quite a fascinating topic, and that is bands breaking up. Where'd this band go? This band only made one record. What happened to so-and-so? Here's the thing. Bands end all the time, and some of them just disappear. And sometimes they leave the world begging for more, and sometimes they just slip away quietly, and nobody even realizes it happened. I mean, the divorce rate's 50%. We think that's an epidemic, but the way I figured, almost every band breaks up. Would you let me get away with saying being in the relationship of a band is harder than a marriage? Because maybe it is. Maybe it is because it has 4, 5, 6 people in it, and you have to live with them, sleep with them, and share all your money with them, and decide what we're going to eat together, and shower with them, and do everything with them, and they drive you crazy, okay? So the point is, it's hard. In fact, it's so hard. I found this stat that says that 9 out of 10 bands in all of the music industry don't recoup on their first record and get to go on to make a second record. Now, in the indie world, it's a lot better than that, and Tooth and Nail even better than that still, of course. But the problems are, it's very difficult to break a band, and then pressures mount up, and if sales aren't enough, and if money's not enough, and things are too tight, that's a big strain. And then on the other hand, for some bands, it's too much too fast, and they're successful, the money's there, and the numbers and things like that, but perhaps they're not prepared to manage their career or their interpersonal stuff, things that they didn't even know were going to be part of the equation once you have some fame and some money and things are going your way. And there's every manner of story in between and all over the place, and every single band has a different and unique and honestly interesting breakup story. And that's what's so neat about it is those are the stories you don't usually hear that much about. You hear origin stories, we hear, prequels to things and stuff like that. But sometimes when things fall apart, slowly or acutely, we don't know the story, and sometimes people are too guarded and don't want to talk about it and are very safe at the time and are a little bit more willing to talk about it as time has passed. And even on the voicemails you guys sent in, there was so many more of these questions than we even have time to answer in an episode, so we picked 4 bands that have breakup stories that we thought we could get good access to and find some interesting information about, and that is what constitutes the episode today. So we'll get right to it. First question. Here we go.
Hey, my name is Kevin Reich. I live in New York City and a longtime Tooth and Nail fan. Thank you guys so much for doing the podcast and for all the great music over the years. Wanted to ask a question about one of my favorite bands and to this day one of my favorite albums, How the Lonely Keep by Terminal. This band puts out this phenomenal album. To this day, I still listen to it often and unfortunately just didn't get any follow-up albums, no tours after that. Wanted to know if you could help me understand and help the fan base understand a little more behind the scenes what happened with Terminal right after that awesome album. All right, guys, thank you.
Hey, this is James Irwin, and I played guitar in the band called Terminal. The first real tour we ever did was Seosin and Amberlin. It was like the first all full US tour we did, and it was like probably 45 shows, and they were all really humongous. And
that's amazing. And that was right after you got signed and put a record out, and you immediately got to do a full US tour with Seosin.
Yeah, and it was right with Seosin and Amberlin.
Oh, Seosin and Amberlin, wow.
Yeah, and it was probably, I would say, 600 to 1,500 kids a night. Like,
wow.
Yeah. It was amazing. We played in Soma in San Diego, like the big room, and there was probably 3,000 people there. And, we weren't even getting paid, but we were making enough on merch every night just to...
How much were you making, do you remember?
I have no idea. I remember we didn't get paid at all to be on that tour, but it was, we were able to get around and feed each other, and we didn't go home in debt or anything, so...
Was it fun?
Oh, man, it was like... We were the young kids, so we kind of got picked on a lot. Like, we'd get to shows, and they would all be hiding and shoot us with airsoft guns. And Like there was lots of pranks that went on, but it was fun because we were kids and it was our first tour experience and new cities. I'd never been to California before, never been a lot of places we went, never been to New York. It was a full U.S. tour, both coasts, Midwest, everything. So lots of firsts in there for us. So it was exciting for sure.
Those are huge numbers of people to play for. Like 400 people is a lot. 1,000 is crazy.
Yeah, it was incredible because it was right when Seosin had it was right when they peaked. Cove had just joined the band and they were massive. Amber Lynn was obviously humongous. Oh, Acceptance was on that tour too.
Wow.
And Code 7. So it was like,
oh, wow.
This was probably 06.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 06 is when this was.
Wow. And so I imagine you had some pretty big expectations of the future if you're out doing that. You must have thought, what's next?
Yeah, we all had really high hopes for the band. I think those expectations were part of the reason why we maybe fizzled out so quick. I think that we were like, oh, we're signed and we're on this huge tour. Everybody should already know all the words and be singing along and think we're huge. We didn't really have a frame of reference for paying your dues and kind of being unknown, and because we were too big for our britches, I think, at that point.
Really? So tell me about that. So you're saying even when you're on that big national tour, which would be any band's dream come true, including my dream come true if I could do it still today, you felt entitled to it, or you should have had more, or what that strikes me as funny.
Man, I think so. There was a I think we kind of had big heads back then, and I don't really.
How did you get the big head? It just happened. You had it before you were signed, or where did the big heads come from?
I don't know, man. I can't really wrap my head around where we had this like crazy expectation of like what we should be before. We didn't have a frame of reference for like, oh, you have to pay your dues, and maybe nobody knows who you are for like a year, and maybe this first record, nobody even really cares about it till later on down the line. And so if I could look back at me at 20 years old, I probably wouldn't like that guy very much, kind of spoiled brat sort of mentality, and so had never really been humbled at that point. I think part of that is maybe sort of the beginnings of some dissent,
You'd be the first flood out of dollars. You leave but never get away.
So how about the record? It was out at that point, right?
Yes.
Were there disappointing numbers with the record, or were you happy about the record, how it was doing itself?
No, we were happy with the record. I remember we did like 1,800 first week, which isn't crazy impressive, but to think that we sold 1,800 records the first week it was out, and like literally no one knew who we were. It's still pretty impressive to me today.
You were pleased with the record and its performance and everything, but still, like, tell me some examples of things you were disappointed with, like the crowds not singing the words. Like, again, this almost feels foreign to me to think that way in that situation. But
I just think that, and we weren't like verbally saying to each other, like, man, I'm so bummed that no one is singing along or knows who we are, But we just, for whatever reason, maybe being a little too entitled and disappointed that we weren't Bono overnight, and mixed with tensions in the band, it just kind of snowballed pretty quick. Just relationships in the band started to unravel. There was a lot of tension between some of the guys and Travis. Man, I think it just all boils down to just being so immature. And for whatever reason, I at the time, I just didn't like the guy. I had just gotten to a point where I didn't really like being with him, and we had just gotten to the point to where he would be hanging out with other bands and we would be all kind of separate, and we were all pretty like youth groupie Christian kids at the time. And he started like smoking cigarettes, which for some reason back then was a big deal, you know?
Yeah, I remember that for sure. Like, so that there was a dichotomy there with him being what you see today is maybe more normal, but back then y'all were in what you identify as a weird mode that the rest of your group was in.
Sure. Like, I remember he started smoking cigarettes when we were recording the record, and I remember like that being kind of like a big deal, and which is so dumb. But I really think the separation with the band and Travis kind of started when we were recording the record, because every band kind of has the dude in the band that drives the sound. And Travis was the guy. I mean, he really drove the sound of Terminal. You know, we all were a part of the writing process and all contributed, but if there was going to be one guy that was kind of the architect of everything, he was definitely the guy for sure. Could not have done the record at all without him. And so, you know, there's egos that go along there too, where it's like, you know, if some people don't have ownership of the sound or feel like maybe they weren't fully represented, then there can start to be separation there if people don't, you know, check their egos. So
Yeah. Do you think it's easier to resent him partly due to that?
I think so, probably because, you know, at the end of the day, his ideas were better than ours. And so they were their ideas represented on the record. And so, you know, it's not too far of a stretch to be like, well, you know, my riffs or my parts weren't chosen over his. And so, you know.
And then the smoking pushed you right over the edge.
And then that smoking was away, yeah. Yeah, and then if you don't feel like you have a niche in the band, then you have no ownership in the band. You know, if you're just a guy playing drums or guitar or bass or whatever, and you feel like you didn't have any part right in the record, you know, and then you don't handle any business, you just kind of sit in the van and play every night, then what ownership do you have? And so, you know, it's easy to kind of throw everything away at that point, you know, and so.
So then did you feel like it was going to end, like you knew it was going to end before it did, or did it end suddenly? How did that end ever manifest?
I think we could all kind of feel the vibe that things were going south. One of the other guitar player, Matt, he had started a t-shirt company, and it was really starting to take off. But I remember the day that everything ended, we had toured out to California with this band called June. It was going to be another decent tour. There was like a 2-day gap where we were just kind of sitting around at this dude's house waiting on the tour to start in Southern California. And it started off with me and 2 of the other guys in the van just being like, man, I don't know if I'm feeling this anymore. You know, I just kind of feel like this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And, you know, I'm just kind of unhappy. And that was kind of the growth. And the conversation started to evolve, and everybody kind of started to say the same thing. And then like another guy would come out to the van, and then what are y'all talking about? And we just kind of go on with that. And the conversation just got really volatile, like really quick. And I remember Travis was the last guy in the van, and our booking agent was there too at the time. And he was kind of like our mediator with some stuff. And I remember we were in the van outside of this dude's house and just started to lay into Travis, like in a terrible way, like something that I still feel really guilty about is some of the things that, you know, I said to him and some of the things that were said to him. And it just boiled over to a point so much to where it was not repairable at that point. You know, I think I basically told him, like, dude, you're like the worst person I know. And I would never want to keep doing this with you.
Oh my gosh.
And so,
how did he respond to that whole conversation?
I mean, he was a wreck. I don't think he had realized I don't think he realized how far it had gotten. And so we literally packed up all of our stuff, or we unloaded the stuff that he needed, like his clothes and his guitar and just his personal stuff out of the van. And we left him in California.
Wow.
And he played that tour just like by himself. Like he would just stand up on stage. Like, what a trooper now to think about that. Like, he would just, not acoustic, he plays electric, but he just played those shows by himself. And we just drove home, like straight from California. It was the weirdest thing. And then our last show ever, or not ever, but the last show at that point, when the tour was supposed to swing through Dallas, we all just met at the club, played the show, and then that was it.
Wow. And then that was it. There's nothing to do. Like you didn't have a ton of money or assets or these big reunions. I mean, there wasn't much to do after that. You just stopped. You didn't want to. It wasn't talk of making another record or stuff like that.
No, that was it. We just disbanded, and I went out and got 2 jobs and was about to settle down with some chick, and Matt started his merch company and kind of dove into that full time, and Lucas almost immediately joined As Cities Burn for a while, playing bass for them. Me and Ryan got jobs. And so everybody just kind of picked up their life really quick and, kind of jumped into what is life post-Terminal going to look like. I look back on who I was back then and maybe who I were and just think, man, we were really immature. And if you could have fast forwarded 5 years and seen the impact that record had on people, that I still hear people love that record. And I'm like, man, if I would have just known in the long run how much that record meant to people, we could have put our petty differences aside and gotten along a lot better and made something happen. Yeah, it was weird. It just happened so fast. We never even sat down and, tried to mediate any kind of truce or, a month later get together and try to figure out, okay, what do we want to do? It ended and it just ended. That was it. We're done, period.
And you called the label and told them? I mean, what about that?
Yeah, we called Chad and told him, or I don't think I didn't call Chad. I think Ryan probably did. Ryan was our the business guy in the band at that point. But Travis hired a bunch of hired guns to come out and be the guys in Terminal. And I think they toured around for a little while, as Terminal, him and some other guys. He got to come play the stuff. And I even think Lucas went back and played some shows as a hired guy for Terminal for a while. When Terminal did a tour with Paramore, Paramore before Paramore was Paramore,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But just thinking about that now, that's so crazy that our band could have done a tour with Paramore. Well, when they were on the rise, it was and it was a big tour. They were doing 700 to 1,000 kids a night even then, And so I think we all sort of think about all the time, man, if we had just been adults and were able to act like adults and not kids, what could that band have been? And we'll just never know.
When the AM rolls around, all the cool kids are coming down. It's a shame that they don't feel well being themselves.
Dream that we were standing in the winter. All the tourists were gone or asleep, or they were falling down from drinking in their hotel rooms.
You're listening to Core de Land, the new single from Tyson Motzenbacher. This track comes from his new EP called Elmira, which comes out September 22nd, later this month. If you haven't checked out his music, you are missing out big time. He's going to be on tour across the nation with Judah and the Lion throughout September and October. So go over and check out if they'll be coming through your town. The new EP, Elmira, comes out September 22nd on Tooth and Nail Records, and you can pre-order it now at toothandnailrecords.merchnow.com.
You're listening to The Print, the newest single from the ongoing concept. The Print is the first single from their new record, Places, which comes out on October 6th. Places is the band's third full-length album with Solid State Records, and is a follow-up to their critically acclaimed sophomore release, Handmade. The band is on tour across America right now with Idola, so head over to their Bands in Town page to see if they'll be in your city this month. Again, Places will be available everywhere on October 6th. You can pre-order it now and get The Print immediately at solidstate.merchnow.com.
Hey guys, my name is Doug. Just wanted to say thanks so much for doing the podcast. I love it. Keep doing what you're doing. It's good work. My question involves the band Beloved. I was and still am a huge fan of theirs, and I've heard rumors that they're possibly getting back together, playing some shows, so I wanted to ask you about that. And also, if you knew anything about why they broke up in the first place. I've heard some rumors and stuff about that as well, but I just never heard the actual story. So if you can give me any information on possible shows or reunion and why they broke up, that'd be great. All right, thanks, guys.
So back in 1999, in Kernersville, North Carolina, arose what is one of my favorite all-time Tooth and Nail bands, Beloved. And if there's one band I could compel to make a follow-up record, it certainly would be Beloved. In 2002, Beloved was in process of working out a deal with Chad Johnson's label, Take Hold Records. Now, Take Hold Records was in process of working out a deal to be acquired by Tooth and Nail Records. So long story short, Beloved winds up on Tooth and Nail and then goes into the studio the following year with producer Gigi Garth to make 2003's Failure On. Now, this record promptly blew up, like in the good way. It was huge. And then the band went along for a while, and then the band blew up, but, not in the good way, as in ended, not to make a follow-up record. So I wanted to talk to the guitar player, Dusty Redmond, and for a particular reason, because Dusty was the guitar player in Beloved, and then as soon as Beloved broke up, which you'll hear about, Dusty joined Dead Poetic. Dead Poetic is another band that we got tons of questions about it. So Dusty is a twofer. He got to be part of the breakup of two legendary Solid State bands of even the same era. Dead Poetic broke up in 2006 when the singer Brandon Reich left the band. So we're going to hear about Dead Poetic and Beloved from Dusty.
I'm Dusty Redmond, and I was the guitar player for Beloved, parentheses, US, Dead Poetic, and The Almost.
What'd you text me yesterday? I was saying we're going to do some stuff about bands breaking up. You said story of my life.
story of my life, man. Like, seriously, you're talking to the right guy.
Tell me about that. Tell me what you mean by that.
Oh, man. Well, let's see. In 1999, we started Beloved. In 2005, we ended Beloved. Shortly thereafter, I joined Dead Poetic. Mm-hmm. Shortly thereafter that, Dead Poetic ended. And then, right after that, I joined The Almost, and then The Almost is kind of like whatever The Almost is right now. But yeah, man. So that's been me, man. I've never been the guy that's gotten to leave a band. I've always been. I've been standing there like what? I just bought this guitar,
Let's start here. So you were in Beloved. They got huge. They were at Cornerstone 2004, giant show. Failure On had just come out, had a video that was getting airplay, the freshest, hippest sound, kids going insane at Cornerstone, North Carolina, all that stuff. What was the peak of Beloved from your view? Tell me about it.
Oh, man. Probably not too long after we did that, around the time we did this big Solid State tour. Mm-hmm. It was like us and Norma Jean, Under Oath, Haste the Day, Dead Poetic.
That was all one tour?
One tour, man.
Yeah,
that was like 2004, because the record came out in 2003. Mm-hmm. So man, yeah, like we're doing this tour, and we had done great tours before, and we toured a lot. But once we got on that tour, and we started having to play 2 shows a night because these venues were like way too small, way underbooked.
I remember that. They were like, hey, they played in Houston, sold it out, did another show and sold it out again the same night.
Yeah,
like
man.
they started an early
same
show
night.
And stuff.
in the freaking summer in Houston.
Yeah, I remember
and,
when that happened.
You know, just like second show, everybody's just, we'll borrow Norma Jean's gear, you know? So we're playing these like PV 5150s and stuff. But, you know, like we get there and we're playing places like we've never played, like House of Blues, Anaheim, and being like, wow, dude, we're playing a show in Disney World. Like, this is crazy. Selling like $5,000 worth of merch.
No way, 5,000?
Yeah, thousands, dude. And you know how it is. You come from a band and you're like, how are we ever going to pay this merch bill off? Like, there's no way we're going to pay it. And we're like, we're on this tour ordering merch and having it drop shipped places because like we're not keeping up with it. And so we're like, this is killer.
Tell me more about that though. What did that feel like? What did you think during that time about your band and you? And, I mean, what did you feel like?
Well, dude, like, first off, the tour was easy because it was nothing but bros. You know, like we'd known Under Oath, you know, since those dudes were black metal, and we've known Norma Jean since they were Ludacris. So, like, we've all kind of come up together, but you know, we were still kind of like that mid tier, but beneath those guys. But man, like we were clicking and like reviews coming in from the shows. Some of them were saying like we were like one of the better acts of the night, and seeing that kind of stuff and feeling as good as we were on stage. And like really at that point, there was no drama between us. So it was just, dude, it's freaking good times.
Yeah.
It's still just like a bunch of kids like going across the country, you know, shooting fireworks at each other still.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, every night is just totally validating. Like you'd sell it, good shows, and the band, and so everybody was happy in the band, everything.
Everybody was happy.
What did you think about your future at that point? What did you think the next year would be?
Oh my God, yeah. You know, you're only thinking like, wow, up. And in the back of our heads, we're kind of thinking like, oh man, well, like, you know, next record. Like when we recorded Failure On, Garth, our producer, was like, you know, you've got your whole life to record your first record. But once you get to that second one, you've got like, you know, 2 years to make that record, and you've got to make that one count. So in the back of our heads, we're all kind of thinking like, well, how should we go? You know, like, do we go heavier? Do we go rockier? Like, what's working? Because that dynamic of the band musically is what people latched onto. You know, I thought we did what we did pretty well. So we're kind of thinking that, but that communication isn't really there. We're kind of living in the moment with that kind of in the back of our minds, like.
But you're assuming you'll make the next record and it'll be big and better, and you know, then now you'll be in the Norma Jean spot soon, and then the next, you know,
sure.
on and on.
And that tour really helped kind of validate that idea, because we felt at that point, you feel like this is the most pro I've ever been. I'm still like setting up my gear on stage in front of everybody before we come on to some epic intro, even though we've been on stage for 15 minutes, and then we're breaking down our gear as soon as it's done, you know. But you feel like we felt at that point like, man, like trajectory is like looking good for us right now.
Oh, but yeah.
But you know, we come off that tour. We did some tours with like A Static Lullaby, who at that time was like big kind of in our scene. But that was another one of those tours where we seemed like we were kind of eclipsing them a little bit on that tour.
Dude, I saw you, just not to interrupt, but I saw you even before that opening for Me Without You and Norma Jean, which was before the tour you mentioned.
Was that in Washington?
Yeah, it was at the Vera Project in Seattle. But you, I mean, I can't really explain it. Like, I can't say that you blew those other bands out of the water, but I was jaw-dropped from the moment you started playing until Norma Jean was done that night, like, uniformly. Like, I couldn't. Yeah. We were just now getting Emory going and doing shows and, like, being what was a real band, playing our, you know, getting ready to make the week's end. And I was just, like, sucker punched with holy shit. I cannot believe this. That's one of the best shows I've ever seen, is you guys at that one there. But you were certainly punching everybody in the face every night. Like, if you didn't know who you were, you would be blown away. No, I mean, it was the perfect sound right ahead of its time for exactly where it was. I mean, it was on point, and then seeing you at Cornerstone, a couple Cornerstones, and the label when we were signed had just put out, your record came out 6 months before ours or something like that. But, or a year, I don't know. And it was just, that's what the label kept saying. It's like, this band's selling 1,000 copies a week, and it's been out for 3 months. And that, that's just all you'd hear is Beloved. Here it comes. Here they go. Here we go.
Yeah, well, I kind of felt like maybe we got in too early and then like cashed out too early too, man. We're just bad timing,
Yeah.
But yeah.
So where were you? Static Lullaby, and you did that tour.
Yeah, like going off.
That's what I'm saying. You were outshining the headliner. So that, and which is a huge thing for a band when you're playing and people leave after you play before the headliner comes. That's what you were saying. You're outselling them in merch, I imagine, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like and at the time, like we were feeling awesome, right? So then, 2004, we end up going to Europe for the first time. A label puts our record out. We're freaking pumped, man. They put the EP out with the full length, and it's like one record. It's like a 15-track album they put out over there. So we go over to Europe, man. We're pumped. Everything seems cool, and we do this tour. It was a really hard tour, man. Like, when was the first time you guys went to Europe?
Probably 07 or something. I mean, it's tough. Yeah, you don't sleep good. You're messed up on time. It's hard.
Were you in a bus or
no,
were you
we were in a Sprinter, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we were in a Sprinter, man, and we're sharing it with Dead Poetic and all our gear and a driver, and dude, it sucks. We had one day off on the whole tour, and we grew up sleeping on floors and stuff, man, but like something happened on that tour. We came home from that tour and Joe got married, and that was like just like the anvil that just like fell like on top of us. And you know how it is, man. Like I don't know who kind of in your circle of friends was like the first guy to get married, like at kind of a young age. When you're like, oh my God, like I've got to grow up right now.
Yes, that happens all the time. Yeah, for us it was our drummer Seth. He got engaged and it was like got to quit the band because you either get married or play in a band, and so it was that. Sure.
The two do not. They run parallel. They right. Like. So that happened. And then he's like, well, I've got to provide for my wife.
Right.
We're like, dude, we're 22 or something at this time.
Were you making money? You weren't. It wasn't money.
Yeah, but it's the whole idea of consistent money, just like this need to provide. And I think Joe grew up with a stronger sense of that being instilled in him. He's got awesome parents who like loved our band and totally supported our band, but he was very indoctrinated with the idea of that, like, I'm the man, I've got to provide for my family. And I think the still like the relative uncertainty of tour by tour, what are we going to bring home? On top of like at that point, like it had gotten to like on top of like, man, like we had kind of tried to write some new songs. It was still kind of wishy-washy, like what we were wanting to do. Josh had started playing in Classic Case, that band Classic Case. You remember them?
Yeah, we toured with them.
So he had started touring with them.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions I have in there. So first of all, Joe he didn't quit. It was getting dicey for him.
It was getting dicey for him, and that was like kind of a no-brainer. Like, man, if Joe quits, especially if we're heading heavier direction.
Because he's more than just a drummer. He does a lot of the vocals with all the screaming and stuff, which is huge.
Dude, and he and Josh like really split the songwriting, like lyrically, so.
To lose Joe was at least seemed like a deal breaker.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it made it too easy too that Josh already had a side hustle.
Yeah. And so that's my second question is why did Josh get into a side hustle when he's in the middle of being like the pseudo front man, at least for Beloved at the time?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just to keep himself busier, maybe. I mean, we were staying busy, but the Classic Case guys were dudes that we kind of looked up to growing up. Josh and I would go see their they had this old band called Blank Face, and Josh and I like grew up skateboarding, and those guys were like the skate punk band locally that kind of did well. And when they did Classic Case, Josh and I were just like hung with those dudes all the time, heard all their demos, heard their first full length, took them on like their first like tour. Josh kind of got a little closer with them, would go hang out with them, kind of just start singing around with them. They realized, hey, this feels really good because Josh is freaking super talented. I think Josh just kind of saw that as something new. Maybe maybe something less constricted on the spiritual side of things,
Mhm.
Like we weren't like insanely like altar call band, but like, Classic Case most certainly wasn't. So, and they seemed like they had a lot of definite good things happening in their future. So
Mhm.
Josh, I think, just kind of took to that. So it made just dissolving the band altogether seem way more like practical and like the best way to do things.
It was just that simple, and it just
Sort of, man. We had a discussion. I remember, man, in my freaking parents'
I mean,
basement.
you can't replace both singers at once. I know
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Like it'd be like me and Matt and Johnny looking around like, I can maybe try and work a kick drum.
But how did Joe and Josh not like? Okay, I just don't understand. There was no fight. Like
no fight.
Like I
No
don't. That
fight.
makes no sense with the band as good. Now, first of all, good artistically, but like valuable and as much potential as Beloved. How does there no fight there? Did you not slap Joe in the face and grab Josh by the collar? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it was tough, man. Like it honestly, like it caught me off guard for sure, because we were downstairs. I remember at my parents, we were kind of jamming a little bit, and then we are kind of like, well, let's just talk a little bit about kind of like what's going on, maybe like what we're going to do. And it's almost like that conversation just evolved into like, well, we should like, we wound up being like, well, we should just play one more show. And you're
Wow.
like, what?
Like you showed up for a normal band jam,
Yeah.
got onto a topic, and by the end of it, you had announced your last show.
Yeah. But like, I think definitely that had been burning in Joe probably for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe's the type of guy where like you're in the moment, dude, he's stoked. Shows are great, having fun. Like Joe, I mean, dude, Joe's born with that. Like, I mean, you could tell 2 months after we played the last Beloved show, Johnny, and Matt were starting to write songs for Advent, like literally like 2 months later, with the idea of it being more of a localized band, rather than touring. But they ended up touring pretty quickly,
That feels weird, right?
It did feel a little weird, but I don't know, man. At that point, like at that point, Josh was like totally gone.
So when Joe said during that conversation, Joe's like, so definitely I'm going to be married. So I'm not saying we have to break up or whatever, but I think I probably won't be around, something like that.
Yeah, essentially.
And so and Josh's reaction to that was what?
Dude, from what I can remember, Josh was like, yeah, like we're not going to be able to go on without Joe. And we can't replace Joe. And dude, I totally agree. Matt and I were maybe like, well, maybe we could, try. We've got a few friends that are awesome drummers. Maybe we can try this out.
I mean, you could have added a drummer and a screamer. There's plenty of people that are good at each of those,
Yeah, or like if we headed more of the like, we could still be heavy and Josh could just sing,
yeah. Okay, so some of this comes back to me now because I remember touring with Classic Case right after Beloved broke up, and I personally, and me and Toby were indignant with Josh. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, and I remember this, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I remember it being like, okay, you've got to continue with Beloved. You definitely can. Here's why, because you're right. Everybody was thinking at the time, like, is it good to scream more or scream less and get bigger type? That was on the table. So it was like, Josh, you're amazing. All you got to do is sing more. Do the less screaming. You might get bigger that way because your songs are amazing. Your vocals are amazing. You're great at guitar. Who knows? You might be bigger without Joe. Just if you get a really great drummer and you sing more, that could be good. And let Dusty scream a little bit. Come on, we'll figure this out. You got to do this, Josh. And he just like, it seemed that he had this thing where it's just like, I don't want to be the sole front man. I don't want that pressure. Was it a pressure thing to him?
I don't know if there was a pressure thing to him or not. Joe was definitely the more outgoing of the two, like dynamic wise. But Josh.
I mean, Josh seemed like he saw himself to me as a third guitar player that sang some, not the man.
That's funny seeing that, like hearing that from the outside looking in.
I think that's kind of the way he portrayed it off stage to me too. I mean, maybe that's false humility. I don't know, but you can speak to that. But that's the way it felt and the way he kind of said it. At least
that's just him buckling under you and Toby. I know how that goes, dude. I feel like I've done that a bunch. You're like, yeah, you're right, you're right. Just shut up, leave me alone.
Maybe so. Fair enough.
But it. So it all just kind of happened. I remember that day because that was the day that Dimebag Darrell got shot.
Oh, wow.
That we had that. And so, like, at that point in my life, I was like, oh, my God, like, this is the worst day of my life.
Yeah, double bad.
Double bad, man. Double bad. So it just happened. So we decided to do this last show.
What was the last show?
Dude, we did the last show. We waited till the beginning of 2005 and did it in our hometown. and we played this venue we'd never played because it was way too big, and it sold out in like 4 days. You know, like we could have done such a bigger
Could have done
venue.
a tour of like that, of course. A headlining tour where you finally all made a ton of money, but you didn't do it. Yeah.
We didn't cash out, man. We're like one of the dumbest bands in Tooth and Nail history.
Yeah.
So we did the show, man. The show was great. Like Under Oath came, Norma Jean came and played, and I think Spencer Norma Jean didn't have Corey. It was like everybody but Corey or something. So Joe sang a song with Norma Jean. Spencer sang a song for Norma Jean. So dude, it was like freaking awesome. Man. It's this great show. You know, Tooth and Nail released like that poor audio DVD of it, but then that was just kind of it. You know,
it really is. That was a sad one for me.
Yeah. Dead Poetic, not so much.
Well, let's talk about Dead Poetic.
Hey, this is Jessica from Missouri. I was wondering about Dead Poetic. My sister used to go to their shows all the time, but then by the time I got old enough to go to shows, they weren't really touring anymore. What gives? Love the podcast. Bye.
You joined Dead Poetic after Beloved. They were already banned, just had put out New Medicines. You know, big time. Awesome record. Everybody loved it. It was, you know, they had a record before that, but they were at their peak for sure in New Medicines, going to Europe, all that stuff.
We were almost a completely new band with 2 old records. Brandon and Zach had gotten Jesse Sprinkle to play drums for them. Their drummer and bass player were brothers. Both had left the band. I started talking to Brandon. I joined the band, got a new drummer. We get a new bass player, my friend John. We immediately just go to Jesse Sprinkle's studio in New York, start writing. Just jump right in.
Did you do any big tours on New Medicines?
We did one, but we had already been writing new stuff for what would become Vices together, just to like fill each other out creatively.
Yeah.
So that you don't feel like just hired guys to do this tour to play these old songs. So we get in, dude, it clicks, man. Jesse's great. Jesse's freaking like Aaron, you know? Those Sprinkles are just like awesome. But it felt really good, man. It felt really good. And kind of while we were there, we were kind of realized we all really, really like bands like Helmet and Quicksand and stuff that Dead Poetic definitely wasn't. So once we kind of realized that, hey, we're in kind of this like weird 90s, like heavier alt rock stuff, like that's kind of what we wanted to start being. But we had to do due diligence to a record that just kind of came out not too long ago. So we book a summer tour and we play New Medicines and the older stuff. And it's fun, man. It's really fun. It felt good to be in like a band that just wanted to be on tour. We had a blast, man. So, and then not long after that, we get all our songs hammered out for Vices. We actually get hooked up. We go to Sacramento, record 2 songs with Chino Moreno from the Deftones, which was freaking insane. Like, dude, so things started looking good, man. Like, we got new management with Dead Poetic, like bigger management.
Are you thinking like, here we go, Beloved screwed up, but here we go, this is my real chance now? And you had to have some point of view of yourself, like, look, I'm good. I'm in this band, we've done this, but other people screwed it up. Now here I am in this other band. I'm writing new stuff. We're having all these opportunities. So yeah, I've got derailed one time, but surely I'm going to be a professional guitarist the rest of my life.
Yeah, what's the chances I'm going to get like crapped on again? So we record Vices, man. We do another tour the next summer. Record's not out. Record is due to come out in Halloween. So we do a summer tour, play New Medicine stuff, some of the new Vices stuff. We do some shows like 1,000 Foot Crutch, do some festival things. Purple Door in Pennsylvania was the last show. we played, and then Vices came out. We were booked on a tour. We got picked up by Michael Arfin Booking, and that dude like books like Metallica and Linkin Park. We were talking about going out with Incubus in the new year.
So your peers at that point are, Incubus and Deftones and all that stuff, right? Like, yeah. Okay.
Like, and that's like what we were going for. So, dude, it's like a clear path. With Beloved, it was kind of like uncertainty. Sonically, what are we gonna be? This is like, we know what we are. We've got an identity. Like, it's different from what we were, but we're set in it. We know our demographic. We know what we're going for. Tooth and Nail was freaking awesome. Like, Brandon was so on board. Like, it was great, man. We had a tour booked with Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, who that first single was just coming out for these guys. Yeah, I think they went gold on that tour. Mm-hmm. I am working like my day job in Philadelphia. I'm driving home, get a call from Brandon saying, hey, man, I'm not doing this tour. I'm not going to do Dead Poetic anymore.
Brandon, for anybody that doesn't know, they're Brandon frontman and singer there.
Yeah, like the driving force behind Dead Poetic. He calls me 5 minutes after my tour manager called me, hey, I just booked the RV for the tour. Mm-hmm. Literally 5 minutes, same commute home. And Brandon calls and, tells me that he's not doing the tour and he's not going to do the band. He's getting married.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm like, and I'm thinking, guys, I've been married for years.
Yeah, you've been married already for several years at this point.
I've been doing this. You can do it, man. But Brandon, the thing that was different with Brandon than the rest of us is Brandon's really a homebody. He's like an extroverted homebody, if that makes any sense. And he's an amazing designer, that dude had like a career, like not a side hustle, but like a side career.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was his long-term plan, while Dead Poetic was doing this, like in his mind, I don't think Dead Poetic should have been escalating the way it was. Mm-hmm. That kind of messed up his
It was a side thing to him the whole time?
But I just don't think he thought in his mind that things were going to start picking up the way they were and opportunity was going to come knocking the way that it actually was. So he bailed.
Again, you didn't try to talk him out of it. You just accept it when your singers quit.
We're kind of like, yo, like, do this tour. Do this tour, come home and get married. It'll be fine.
Take some time off.
Thinking,
we'll do less shows.
Yeah. And the shows that we do will convince you, hey, dude, like if we're doing Incubus and Linkin Park shows, like those are the type of shows that make you want to keep playing shows, We're not playing like the Waffle House or, we're not playing just some
churches
junk
anymore,
Yeah. Like the floor stage in a youth room.
Right.
So that was tough, man. He and Brandon, man, like he stuck to his freaking guns and he's like, well, I know a couple singers that can maybe do it. And you're like, that's stupid. Because at that time it's like, dude, it's you, Zach, and a bunch of new guys still for fans of Dead Poetic. No matter what Jesse's done, no matter what I've done in the past, nobody's coming to see us. They're coming to see Dead Poetic.
Yep.
And Brandon's Dead Poetic. Mm-hmm. So that's like just a bombshell. Not to mention our record's coming out literally in a week that Tooth and Nail had spent a ton on budget. Mm-hmm. They had been promoting like crazy. We shot a freaking video on film, which was like, you always had like Darren Doan videos, Like we shot on freaking film, dude.
Do you remember how much that cost?
Way too much. We had the crew from CSI. It was like a union film crew. We shot it in Los Angeles, rented a theater out.
Yeah. Did you have craft services and all that at the video shoot,
dude,
right?
It was insane.
I know what you mean. We did that once
too. Yeah, legit hair and makeup.
Yeah, wardrobe, everything. Yeah.
So Tooth and Nail had invested so much, man. And I remember like the emails from Brandon, and it's like, I think like because Brandon at that time,
oh my god,
every corner like Brandon would blame me for Beloved, and then Dead Poetic, so I got blamed for that, dude. It wasn't until like 3 years later I was in the Almost at dinner with Brandon in Nashville until he finally freaking forgave me, like outright forgiven. Mm-hmm. But there was nothing that we could do. If Brandon was out, that was it. Mm-hmm. That was it for the band. Still birthing a record that we were so stoked on was the crappiest feeling.
Oh yeah.
That, that's the crappiest. Canceling shows is one thing, but putting a record out for no reason, that was it was such a bummer, man. And the record label is always kind of like your boss and stuff, but dude, like I legitimately felt bad. Yeah, I felt bad for Brandon and for like John Fraser and like, you know, the guys that had worked that record. And it sucked.
Hey, this is Steve from New Mexico. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about Poor Old Lou, and I was thinking, were they on Tooth and Nail, and what ever happened to them?
Okay, so now we're going to go back even further. We got another twofer here, actually, and this is Jesse Sprinkle that I'm going to talk to. So Jesse Sprinkle was the drummer in a band called Poor Old Lou, who, although was not on Tooth and Nail back in the 90s, talking about 92 to 96 era here, Jesse and his brother Aaron Sprinkle and Poor Old Lou are inextricably linked to Tooth and Nail history through and through, from bands they played in, records they produced, toured with, and so forth. So Poor Old Lou is an interesting one, and they're just a freaking legend. They're just legendary. And additionally, Jesse was in Dead Poetic at the time of their demise too, so I had some thoughts on that. So this is the last one here. We're going to talk to Jesse Sprinkle from Poor Old Lou and Dead Poetic. It's nice to talk to you and see you, Jesse, so I appreciate your time tonight too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jesse Sprinkle, and I played drums with Poor Old Lou and Dead Poetic.
Let's start with Poor Old Lou. So the way that I look at this and the way that I want to do it is I want you to start by describing to me what you view as the pinnacle of Poor Old Lou.
Well, I've never actually had anybody ask that. I guess there's a couple different approaches I would have for what the pinnacle was. I mean, there's like that initial, boost that we had on the first two records, obviously. But as our second record, Sin, came out, that's when I really felt like there was a huge boost. But then down the road, as we started doing a lot more traveling, is kind of when I felt like this is it. We were playing with other cool bands, and
Mm-hmm. So when you said that, what you say, like this was it? Like, tell me what it was.
I guess just seeing a bunch of the U.S. and, getting to play with other bands and kind of feeling like we had a few cool records under our belt, that kind of a thing. I have a vivid image in my head of a marquee in Pennsylvania that had us on tour. It had like the Vigilantes of Love on the marquee and a couple other bands or whatever. I still have a photo of it from an old-fashioned film I used to shoot, I would say that was 95, 96, somewhere around there.
So 95 and 96, and you were out touring the country, like real tours at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our earlier days of Poor Lou, we did kind of the West Coast thing, we were real young and
so
this and that.
The whole thing was fun. You were having fun.
Yes.
You were how old?
Okay, so when we got signed, I was 16, so by the time our later tours were happening, I was 17, 18.
So you're 18-year-old in the mid-90s touring Poor Old Lou, like on your third record.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the dynamic like in the band? Everybody was happy and enjoying it, and what did y'all think was going to happen next?
Looking back, man, I don't have a clue. I mean, I was really in the moment more than I realized at the time. But
tell me about just the relationships with you and the guys in the band during that time when it was doing really well. Were y'all healthy and fun? And
to me, everyone was pretty tight. But having a brother in the band, that always makes things crazy. But
tell me how. What was it? What was it like? What was the bad sides or good sides of having a brother in the band?
Well, the good sides were awesome because we knew each other really well and we worked well together. But I think he was the one that was kind of wanting to move on from the band before the rest of the band was. So I think he was the one that kind of wanted to do other music, and he was the first to get married, that kind of stuff. So growing up, moving on, sort of a thing.
I think when I hear him talk about touring, he kind of acts like it was always difficult, or he never quite got in the groove of that. Is that right?
That would make sense.
And is that not? Do you think it felt different for Aaron than the rest of you guys?
I can't speak for the other couple dudes. I know that I did a lot more touring later on, so maybe I just kind of either liked it more or sucked it up. I don't really know, honestly, but yeah, maybe that just wasn't Aaron's thing, as being on the road. Obviously, he's got such a ridiculous gift for creating in the studio, so you're probably on the money with that.
Yeah, so take me back there. Like you just said, retrospectively looking back, Aaron was the first one that what?
Well, I mean, I just remember he was the first one that got married, and he had other musical aspirations where I think the rest of us were pretty content with the band itself. I had started writing, music on the side, but it wasn't anything that anybody would care about. But I think he had ideas of, leading a band on all that kind of stuff. So that definitely affected, his passion for being in Portaloo. There's a lot of different sides of the story. I would say it was mostly this one tweet that got out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was a tweet, yeah.
Back in 96.
Yeah.
No, I mean, well, the interesting thing is, I know that he had, getting married and kind of wanting to do something different was a factor, but I also got married in 96 and moved to New York. So
what happened? I mean, you were touring, you put out a record, and then you and Aaron both got married, and then what?
We broke up. I honestly, to this day, don't even really remember what happened. Like, we're not a band. I mean, what do you say? There wasn't any big fights or anything like that. I mean, I was moving to New York. My wife was still in college, and Aaron had other aspirations. And I don't remember any big fights, but of course, when a band breaks up, it's uncomfortable,
What was the situation of breaking up? You just had, like, who came to who? Were you at a diner? Did you call a band meeting? You don't remember any of that stuff?
21 years. I honestly have no idea. I can't remember to this day. There's a few things I remember, but I don't remember. Like, you would think it's kind of like everyone knows where they were at 9/11. It's like, yeah, I was
right. Well, this is your
church
first band,
and
it was big, and it's one of the most influential bands in Tooth and Nail history and the scene. And it went away and it broke up, and you don't even remember it happening.
Hey, you can tell me. I'm not even trying to like hide anything. Like, I really don't remember. Like, I remember being bummed.
What about Scott? I mean, Scott didn't? I mean, what about him? Wasn't he? I mean, did he want the band to end?
I don't think anybody did, really, other than maybe Aaron. And I love him. I'm not saying anything mean about him. It's like,
sure.
I think that's just the place he was in at that point in time. But
so your memory is Portaloo was a band, and then after that, it wasn't. Is that basically it?
in all honesty, I could have just I maybe was kind of caught up in my plans of getting married myself, you know, whether it was like psychological kind of shifting to something else so I don't have to deal with it. I mean, I don't know, or maybe I just was like, okay, I have something new going on here.
And so when Portaloo was gone, you had moved on to a new chapter, so much so that you didn't really miss it immediately or lament that it was gone?
Not immediately, no. You know, I jumped into a whole new life, and I was in the middle of Western New York, you know, trying to figure out how to be an adult and all that stuff. So it was a delayed reaction, you know. But after being in a whole bunch of bands after that, I started to kind of look back and be like, man, that was a really good situation. Like, I suppose when we did stop playing, it was a little bit of a, you know, oh my gosh, the breaks just kind of went on. Honestly, looking back, like, I kind of miss those times because I've been in so many bands ever since, and it's like you don't have that dynamic of just being close friends that know each other really well.
Okay, so you made Vices and you loved it. It was a great record. And what happened from your point of view from then?
Honestly, I mean, just when we didn't want to when we didn't want to tour, meaning we as in half of us, then the label pulled their, marketing and all that promotion stuff, and then it just kind of fizzled out after that.
Well, what's the not wanting to tour part? You got this band, you go in, you write this record, you have all this opportunity, and you like it, and you're doing it. What tell me about what's the not wanting to tour part?
Well, mostly it was Brandon kind of wanting to be married and be a designer. I suppose he would be like the Aaron of Poor Lou. He didn't love being on the road. It was kind of a burden for him. He wasn't a passionate musician the same way that a lot of us are, and I'm not saying that in a mean way. It's like his drive and passion was doing design. Music was kind of like, I guess I'll do this sort of a thing. And after a while, I think he just got burnt out on it. He's just like, this is too much. And me, I was kind of on the fence. Like, I was starting this studio, and I needed to focus on that. So it wasn't all on Brandon, because when me and Brandon talked and we had this Red Jumpsuit Apparatus tour going on, we both were kind of like, I could be happy not doing this tour. So it can't all go on Brandon, because I had other things I was dealing with my life and my family too, which contributed to that. But he probably would have quit even if I wanted to do it anyways. But in a way, I wanted to keep Dead Poetic going because that was an important thing for me. It's just a band that I like doing, but there was still something stirring in me that's like, I need to stay home. I was the only one that had a bunch of kids in the band, so I didn't really want to be on the road all the time. But it was bittersweet for Dead Poetic. I didn't want it to end, really. But
Dusty said that Brandon called him and just told him, and then that was it. Did y'all not get together or talk after that or anything?
No, that band was especially complicated because we had 2 North Carolina people, 2 Ohio people, and then me in New York. So it was kind of like you get the phone call and you're like, all right.
So what do you remember talking to Brandon or the rest of the guys about breaking up? What did that feel like? Do you feel like you were letting other guys down, or were you were glad that Brandon quit? Tell me about some of the feelings there.
No, I felt kind of torn. I mean, because I really liked the band. I felt kind of in the middle. I know that Dusty and John were both pretty upset because they were kind of putting their momentum and their energy in that direction. But I think Dead Poetic was the closest thing to, even though they started before I joined, it still felt like it was a very band-oriented, friendship / we all contribute kind of a thing, which that's why that one was still tough for that to end, even though I felt like it needed to, I guess, at the time.
Thank you guys for listening to the Labeled Podcast. It really is something special how many people are giving us feedback and enjoying this and liking it. We enjoy making it, and your support is much appreciated. What I'm asking you to do is tell somebody, share this, do word of mouth, just like the indie scene's always been. It's a word of mouth thing. So if you like this podcast, just tell somebody. I don't know, maybe leave a rating or review. It doesn't even matter. Just download it, subscribe, and talk about it. That's all we ask of you. All right, my name is Matt Carter. I do the show along with Toby Morrell and Aaron Lunsford. This episode's also produced, edited, and mixed by Melanie Studley. Assistant producers Marshall Fremuth, Reva Hansen, and Tyson Paletti. Special thanks to Adam Scatula from Tooth and Nail for helping to develop the show. All right, see you soon.